The silent invasion. It was a quiet night across the galaxy, a night that seemed like any other. The stars twinkled in the vast expanse of space, and Earth had no reason to suspect that anything was amiss. For centuries, humans had lived in peace, with no major threats from the stars. They had learned to survive, to thrive, and to explore the farthest reaches of space. But that night, everything changed. A single transmission broke the silence, piercing through the deep void of space. It wasn't a friendly message, nor was it one of hope. It was a chilling, cold, and emotionless signal. The message came from an unknown source. It didn't contain a greeting or a plea for help. It was simple, but terrifying. The Rotarians are coming. You have no defense. That was all. No explanation. No more words. Just those few sentences that struck fear into the heart of anyone who received them. The message was quickly decoded by humanity's best minds, but it didn't offer much clarity. Who were the Rotarians? What did they want? Why was Earth the target? Humanity had always feared the unknown, but this was different. The Rotarians were no myth. They were real, and their arrival was imminent. Stories of this ancient alien race had been passed down through the centuries, always whispered, always with a sense of disbelief. The Rotarians were said to be ruthless conquerors, a civilization that had wiped out entire species in the past without a second thought. Their power was unmatched, and their cruelty was legendary. As the news spread across Earth, panic set in. Governments scrambled to react, military forces were placed on high alert, but no one knew what to expect. Earth had faced threats before: alien races, political tensions, and cosmic disasters. But nothing like this. The Rotarians weren't just any alien species. They were a race of conquerors, and they were coming to destroy everything humanity held dear. The message was only the beginning. In the days that followed, reports came in from every corner of the galaxy. Entire colonies went dark. Planets that had once been bustling with life now lay in silence, their signals cut off, their inhabitants missing. The attacks weren't just on military outposts. They were on entire civilizations, wiped out without warning or mercy. Humanity tried to prepare, but how could they defend themselves against an enemy they knew so little about? The few encounters with the Rotarians that had been reported were nothing short of horrifying. No one had lived to tell the tale, and the records were fragmentary at best. But there were enough whispers, enough rumors, to piece together a picture of the invaders. A technologically advanced, brutal race with no empathy or mercy. They took what they wanted, and they destroyed everything in their path. On Earth, the leaders gathered, discussing the situation with growing fear and urgency. They knew they had to act quickly, but they had no idea how. Their military was powerful, but it had never faced a foe like this. Humanity's best minds worked tirelessly to figure out a plan, but every theory seemed to fall short. The Rotarians were too powerful, too organized, and they had already demonstrated their ability to crush any resistance. Earth's defenses would be no match for them. And then, just as all hope seemed lost, something extraordinary happened. A small group of scientists, working in secret, revealed something that might change everything. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a shield or armor. It was a new kind of technology, something humanity had never seen before. It was called the teleportation fleet. This fleet wasn't just about firepower or advanced technology. It was about movement, speed, a new way of fighting back. The idea was simple. If humanity couldn't match the Rotarians in sheer strength, they could outmaneuver them. They could strike fast and hard, using teleportation to reach enemy lines before the Rotarians even had time to react. This was the first glimmer of hope humanity had seen in days. The plan wasn't perfect, but it was their only chance. The teleportation fleet would be the key to humanity's survival, but it had one major flaw. It wasn't fully developed yet. There were still issues to solve, and time was running out. The Rotarians were already approaching Earth's solar system. If humanity didn't act fast, They would be overrun before they could even begin to fight back. As the fleet began to take shape, tensions ran high. The scientists worked around the clock, building ships capable of teleporting across the galaxy, developing strategies to use their new technology in combat. Meanwhile, Earth's leaders scrambled to unite their forces, to prepare the people for what was coming. They didn't know how many would survive, but they knew they couldn't back down. The fate of humanity rested on a razor's edge. The Rotarians were coming. Humanity had no choice but to fight. And so, in the silence of space, the stage was set for a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The war had begun. Humanity's last hope. The days following the first message from the Rotarians felt like a blur. Every moment was filled with a sense of growing dread and uncertainty. People across the globe could do nothing but wait and watch as their government scrambled to formulate a defense. The world's greatest minds, military leaders, and strategists pored over every scrap of information they could find about the invaders, but there was nothing concrete. No one had ever faced the Rotarians before, and humanity was about to learn that the galaxy was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The teleportation fleet, humanity's last hope, was coming together. It wasn't much, not yet. The fleet was made up of ships still in the early stages of development, prototypes hastily built in secret research facilities scattered around the world. The technology behind teleportation had been theorized for years, but it had never been perfected. Now, in the face of extinction, humanity was using every ounce of their scientific know-how to make it work. It wasn't an easy task. The first test of the teleportation fleet was nothing short of disastrous. Ships vanished into thin air, only to reappear moments later in the wrong locations or not at all. Some ships found themselves trapped in an endless loop, reappearing in the same spot over and over, as though they couldn't escape the clutches of space. The fleet had no time to be perfect. They had to act, and they had to act quickly. Humanity had no choice but to keep pushing forward. The world's most brilliant engineers worked day and night to perfect the system, making adjustments and correcting flaws as the clock ticked down. There was no time for failure. Earth's survival depended on this technology, and failure would mean the end of everything. As the fleet slowly began to take shape, humanity's leaders made one critical decision. They would launch the first strike before the Rotarians could establish a full assault. The first wave of the fleet would strike at the heart of the Rotarian armada, catching them off guard and hoping to break their momentum. It was a risky move, and the chance of success was slim, but it was humanity's only chance to win this war. The first strike was to take place under the cover of darkness, when the enemy would be least prepared. The teleportation fleet would appear in the heart of the Rotarian fleet, striking at the most vulnerable points. The plan was to teleport in, deal a devastating blow, and teleport out before the enemy could retaliate. But despite the great technological advancements, the humans knew they could not rely on technology alone. Their courage, their ingenuity, and their desire to survive would be what carried them through. The fleet launched in the dead of night. Thousands of ships, each carrying humanity's best soldiers, scientists, and pilots, disappeared into the void. The only thing visible to the rest of the galaxy was the faint, flickering glow of their last transmission as they jumped into deep space. It was a moment of tense silence. And then, the fleet reappeared, right in the heart of the Rotarian fleet. The battle erupted in an instant. The Rotarians had no idea what hit them. The humans' ability to strike with such speed and precision was unlike anything the Rotarians had ever seen. It was chaos. The humans teleported in, attacked key targets with laser precision, and then vanished again, only to reappear in another part of the fleet, ready to strike once more. The Rotarians scrambled, disoriented, and unsure of how to respond. The humans were everywhere at once, each strike leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The Rotarians, known for their advanced weaponry and battle-hardened soldiers, were taken completely by surprise. They had never anticipated such a tactic. For the first time in centuries, the invincible Rotarians found themselves on the back foot. They were being forced to adapt, to deal with a threat they couldn't predict or contain. But even as the humans made their first strike, the cost of the battle began to show. Ships were still failing in the teleportation process, some appearing in the wrong coordinates, while others became trapped in the deep reaches of space. The new technology was unstable, and with every jump, humanity risked losing their fleets and soldiers. Yet despite the immense risk, the battle raged on. Humanity's forces struck and retreated over and over, each time more devastating than the last. The teleportation fleet's ability to strike without warning, to hit their enemies where it hurt the most, turned the tide of battle. The Rotarians, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves fighting for their very survival. As the first wave of attacks drew to a close, the humans paused, regrouping in the silence of space. The Rotarians had been stunned, but the war was far from over. Humanity had shown them what they were capable of, but now they would need to dig deeper. The teleportation fleet had given them the upper hand for now, but it would take everything humanity had to win this war. Back on Earth, the leaders of the human race watched the battle unfold in real time. Their hopes were high, but they knew the true test had just begun. The first strike was only a glimpse of what was to come. The Rotarians were fierce, relentless, and they would not back down easily. But humanity had proven that they would not be defeated without a fight. As the fleet prepared for the next phase of the war, one thing was certain: humanity's will to survive had never been stronger. They had made the first move, but the Rotarians would not rest until they had their revenge. The war was just beginning, and humanity's greatest challenge was yet to come: the battle for survival. The war had officially begun. Humanity had struck the Rotarians hard, but the battle was far from over. After the initial teleportation strike, there was a brief moment of calm as both sides regrouped, but that calm wouldn't last long. The Rotarians, though caught off guard, were quick to adapt. They knew they could not afford to lose their dominance in the galaxy. If they let humanity continue this attack, they might lose everything. On the other hand, the humans, despite their success, knew the battle was only just beginning. The teleportation technology that gave them such an advantage was still unpredictable, and every jump was a risk. Ships had failed, and some were lost in the void of space forever, but humanity was determined. They had come this far, and they wouldn't back down now. If anything, the fight had only made them more resolved to succeed. The next phase of the battle was far more intense. The Rotarians retaliated with all their might, bringing out their advanced weaponry and battle strategies. Their fleet, though initially stunned, now moved with deadly precision, anticipating humanity's every move. The humans, however, used their teleportation capabilities to stay one step ahead, jumping from one location to the next, never staying in the same place for long. It was like a deadly game of cat and mouse, with the humans using their technology to disorient and confuse the Rotarians. But the Rotarians were no slouches. They had their own tactics, and they were learning quickly. As the humans teleported in and out, the Rotarians began to adapt their strategies. They used their own ships to create traps, creating pockets of space where humanity's fleet was more likely to materialize. They had become more cautious, more calculating. The humans' advantage was quickly shrinking. As the battle wore on, the humans' morale started to waver. The cost of their early success was becoming evident. More ships were failing to return, and more soldiers were losing their lives. Yet, despite the losses, the humans continued to press on. They fought with an unrelenting determination, refusing to let their fallen comrades die in vain. It was no longer just about survival. It was about victory. The humans were fighting for their future, for the future of their children, and for the survival of their species. One pivotal moment in the battle came when humanity's fleet appeared in the heart of a Rotarian armada, striking at the heart of their command center. The attack was swift, precise, and devastating. The Rotarians had no idea how to counter it. Humanity's ships appeared from seemingly nowhere, struck with deadly force, and vanished before the enemy could retaliate. But even in the heat of victory, humanity wasn't immune to the chaos of war. A group of human ships that had successfully carried out the strike found themselves in a deadly situation. Their teleportation coordinates were off, and they appeared in the middle of a rotating black hole. The gravity of the black hole started pulling the ships toward its deadly center. Time seemed to slow as the crew members scrambled to make adjustments, fighting to get the ships out of the gravitational pull. It was a desperate race against time. The humans had to rely on their ingenuity and the very teleportation technology that had helped them achieve so much to save them. With moments to spare, the fleet managed to escape, but not without great cost. Several ships were lost in the chaos of the escape, and many lives were sacrificed. The survivors had barely made it out, but they lived to fight another day. On the battlefield, humanity's resilience was becoming more evident. Even as the cost of war mounted, their will to fight never wavered. The war had become something more than a battle between two species. It had become a testament to the strength of the human spirit. The Rotarians were still formidable foes, but humanity was proving that they would never surrender. The fight for survival was far from over, and the human spirit would not be crushed. As the human fleet continued its relentless assault, one thing became clear. This was no longer just a war for survival. This was a war for dominance, and humanity was ready to do whatever it took to win. The humans had proven that they could take on the might of the Rotarians, and they would continue to push forward, no matter the cost. In the end, the battle wasn't just about weapons or technology. It was about something far more powerful, the unyielding human resolve. The war had only just begun, and humanity was determined to show the galaxy that they were not just survivors. They were conquerors. The Rotarians' counterattack. The aftermath of humanity's bold strike against the Rotarians had left both sides reeling. The humans had tasted victory, but the Rotarians, with their vast resources and ruthless tactics, were not about to let the human fleet dominate without retaliation. The war was far from over, and if anything, it had just begun. For the first time in the war, the humans began to feel the true weight of what they were up against. The Rotarians had regrouped, and they were determined to crush humanity's teleporter fleet. They knew that if they could take out this new weapon of war, they could bring the fight to a halt before it ever truly escalated. But it wouldn't be easy. The Rotarians began to adapt, adjusting their strategies and creating countermeasures specifically designed to neutralize humanity's teleportation advantage. They deployed a new breed of ship, faster and more maneuverable than anything they had previously used. These ships were equipped with advanced tracking systems that could pinpoint teleportation signatures. Once a human ship was detected, the Rotarians would move in quickly, closing in before the humans could make another jump. But the humans weren't unprepared. The war had taught them many lessons, and they had learned how to better use their teleportation technology. They began to develop new tactics, using feints and decoys to confuse and overwhelm the Rotarians. For every trap the Rotarians set, the humans seemed to have a counter for it. The battle was becoming a deadly game of cat and mouse, with both sides using everything at their disposal to gain the upper hand. However, the Rotarians weren't the only ones adjusting their tactics. Humanity had developed new strategies of their own. They knew that the key to winning this war was not just to survive, but to outthink the enemy. They began to use their teleportation technology in ways that the Rotarians never anticipated. Instead of attacking head-on, the humans started to teleport behind enemy lines, striking critical targets in surprise raids. It was chaotic, brutal, and effective. But as humanity continued to push forward, cracks began to show in their strategy. The teleportation technology, while powerful, was not perfect. The strain it put on the ships and crew was immense, and the risks were higher than ever. Some ships were lost when their jump coordinates were slightly off, leaving them stranded in deep space or caught in hostile territories. The human fleet was suffering casualties, and not every mission came out unscathed. In the midst of the chaos, a new problem emerged. The Rotarians, once again, showed their adaptability. They began to develop their own teleportation technology, albeit on a much smaller scale. At first, the humans thought it was just a minor threat, a few small ships making jumps here and there. But soon, they realized that the Rotarians had developed a counter to their most powerful weapon. In a massive confrontation, the Rotarians launched a devastating attack. They used their teleportation ships to infiltrate the heart of the human fleet, striking key supply stations and weapons depots. The humans scrambled to react, but the attack was swift and brutal. Several ships were taken out before humanity could even deploy their countermeasures. It was a loss that the human fleet could not afford. The damage was immense. The human fleet was thrown into disarray as the Rotarians wreaked havoc on their logistics and support systems. This attack put humanity's war effort at serious risk, and the morale of the fleet began to plummet. The Rotarians had struck a massive blow, and for the first time, humanity was on the defensive. But humanity was never one to back down. As the Rotarians continued to press their advantage, humanity's resolve only grew stronger. They had been through worse before. The spirit of the humans was unbreakable, and despite the mounting losses, they were ready to fight back. The question now was, how would humanity respond? Would they let the Rotarians continue their attack, or would they unleash a new weapon of their own? One thing was certain: the war was far from over. And for every setback, humanity found a way to rise again. Humanity's last hope. The stars seemed dimmer in the aftermath of the Rotarians' devastating counterattack. For the first time, the once unshakable confidence of humanity's fleet was replaced with a sense of fear. The Rotarians had proven that they could adapt quickly, countering humanity's teleportation technology with devastating effectiveness. Key supply stations were destroyed, ships were lost, and morale plummeted across the human fleet. But amid the chaos, the humans were not entirely without hope. A small group of human commanders, known for their brilliant strategies, began to gather in secret. These were the best and brightest military minds that humanity had to offer, and they were determined to find a way to turn the tide. In the darkest hour, when all seemed lost, one of the commanders, Admiral Catherine Lark, called for a daring new plan. A plan so bold, so dangerous, that it could either save humanity or destroy it completely. She believed that the key to defeating the Rotarians lay not in their technology, but in their psychology. The Rotarians were ruthless, but they were not invincible. They had their own weaknesses, chief among them, their pride. Admiral Lark proposed a high-risk, high-reward strategy: lure the Rotarians into a trap so complex, so convincing, that they would underestimate humanity once again. She believed that if the humans could create the illusion of weakness, the Rotarians would make a fatal mistake. They would assume that humanity was finished and would push for a final, decisive strike. The plan involved using a small group of ships, almost a decoy fleet, to create the appearance that the human forces were disorganized and on the brink of collapse. These ships would appear to be retreating, fleeing to the farthest reaches of human space. The Rotarians, eager to crush humanity's remaining forces, would surely chase after them, convinced they could finish the war in one final, overwhelming blow. However, Admiral Lark's fleet wasn't truly retreating. Hidden among the decoy ships was humanity's final trump card: a fleet of specialized warships, heavily armed and equipped with advanced teleporter technology. These ships would be waiting in the shadows, ready to strike at the heart of the Rotarians' forces when they least expected it. The success of the plan depended on perfect execution. If even a single ship in the decoy fleet were to be destroyed too soon, the Rotarians would know something was wrong, and the entire trap would collapse. It was a risky move, but Admiral Lark had no other choice. The humans had already lost so much. There was no room left for mistakes. The countdown began. Humanity's decoy fleet was prepared and ready to move. The Rotarians, sensing victory, were assembling their final assault. The stage was set for a climactic battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. As the first wave of decoy ships began their retreat, the human fleet held its breath. Every commander, every soldier, every pilot knew that this could be their last stand. The entire fate of humanity rested on their ability to fool the Rotarians into underestimating them. For days, the human fleet retreated, pulling further and further away from the Rotarians' reach. The Rotarians, confident in their victory, followed closely behind. They couldn't have known that it was all part of humanity's master plan. Admiral Lark and her commanders watched as the enemy grew closer, their forces swelling with the promise of an easy victory. Yet, deep within the shadows of the human fleet, the real battle was about to begin. The time was coming. Humanity's trap was nearly set. The moment of truth. The waiting was excruciating. Across the human fleet, the tension was palpable, thick enough to cut through. Every commander, every soldier, was acutely aware of what was at stake. The illusion of weakness was their last card, and it had to be played perfectly. One wrong move, one hint of deception, and everything would fall apart. Admiral Catherine Lark stood in the command center of her flagship, the Vanguard, watching the holographic map of the galaxy unfold before her. The decoy ships were well ahead, retreating in disarray, just as planned. The Rotarians were in pursuit, their fleet swelling in size as they neared the edge of human-controlled space. "Hold steady," Admiral Lark muttered under her breath. "This is our last chance." Her crew had grown silent, as if holding their collective breath. Even the hum of the ship seemed quieter now. No one spoke. Everyone knew what was coming. The plan had to work, and there was no room for second-guessing. As the hours passed, the Rotarians continued to chase the retreating ships. The distance between the human decoys and the main fleet grew. Soon, the final moment would arrive. Then, just as the Rotarians were preparing for their final strike, the first signal came. The flagship of the decoy fleet blinked once, confirmation that the trap had been set. The enemy fleet was too close now. The first phase of the plan had to be executed immediately. "Prepare the fleet," Admiral Lark ordered. Her voice was steady, but a flicker of tension flashed in her eyes. "This is it." The decoy ships began to scatter, drawing the Rotarians into a false sense of victory. Their fleet surged forward with overwhelming confidence, believing they were about to destroy humanity once and for all. They couldn't have known that the real battle was waiting for them just around the corner. Across the shadows of human space, the hidden fleet, consisting of the true warships, shifted into position, ready to make their strike. The Vanguard was one of the last ships to join the fray, its engines roaring to life as it powered up for battle. The Rotarians hadn't expected this. They thought they had won, but they were wrong. Admiral Lark watched the unfolding chaos through the viewport. The first wave of human ships emerged from the shadows, emerging from cloaked positions in the deepest voids of space. It was a surprise attack of unparalleled scale, one that had been carefully orchestrated for months. The human ships, heavily armored and equipped with advanced teleportation technology, rained hell upon the Rotarian fleet. The first explosion was deafening, tearing through the hull of the nearest Rotarian dreadnought. Shockwaves rippled outward, and the enemy fleet faltered. Chaos erupted in the ranks of the Rotarians as their once pristine formations shattered. The humans' teleportation technology allowed them to appear and disappear in the blink of an eye, wreaking havoc on the enemy lines. Each human ship hit its target with deadly precision, and every attack sent a shockwave through the Rotarian forces. Admiral Lark's heart raced as she watched the Rotarians panic. They had been so sure of their victory, so confident in their power. But now, their arrogance had led them into a trap they couldn't escape. The humans were no longer the weaklings the Rotarians had once mocked. They were warriors in every sense of the word, and their vengeance was swift and brutal. As the human fleet continued its assault, Admiral Lark issued the command to press the attack. She knew that they had to strike fast and hard before the Rotarians could regroup. There would be no turning back now. If they hesitated for even a moment, the advantage would be lost. With every explosion, with every shattered ship, the human fleet grew bolder. The first wave of Rotarians was already reeling, and humanity's forces pushed forward, gaining momentum with every passing second. The tide of the war was beginning to shift. But even in the chaos of battle, Admiral Lark knew that this was only the beginning. There was still a long way to go before humanity could claim victory. The Rotarians were powerful, and they would not give up easily. But the message was clear. Humanity had risen, and it was here to stay. As the battle raged on, the Rotarians realized they had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, its ability to fight back when pushed to the edge. Now, they would pay the price for their arrogance. Humanity had taken the first step toward reclaiming their place in the galaxy, and nothing would stop them now. The final showdown. The atmosphere in the human fleet was electric, the feeling of hope and dread mixing together like a storm ready to break. The battle had raged for hours, but there was still no clear victor. The Rotarians, once so sure of their dominance, were now floundering. But the human fleet was not without its vulnerabilities. The cost of this strike was mounting, and the question remained, could they hold their advantage? Admiral Catherine Lark stood at the front of the command center aboard the Vanguard, her eyes fixed on the holographic map of the battlefield. The human fleet had torn through the Rotarians with unexpected ferocity, but the enemy had started to regroup. They were strong, resourceful, and dangerous. Humanity had dealt them a blow they hadn't anticipated, but now the true test would begin. "We have them on the ropes," said Lieutenant Thompson, the officer in charge of the communications. His voice carried a tremor of uncertainty. "But they're starting to stabilize. We need to press the advantage before it's too late." Catherine nodded, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. "Yes, Lieutenant, we do. But we need to be careful. We can't let our guard down, not even for a second. We have to finish this." Her voice was firm, but deep inside, her heart was racing. The victory they had hoped for was within their grasp, but the enemy was not going to fall easily. They had underestimated the Rotarians' resolve, and the battle ahead was sure to be just as intense as the one they had already fought. The Vanguard shook slightly as it received incoming fire, but the shields held firm. Catherine clenched her fists, her thoughts racing. The main body of the Rotarian fleet was now concentrating its fire on the decoy ships, but it was only a matter of time before they turned their attention to the heart of the human assault. "Now," she ordered, her voice cold with determination, "prepare for the final push." Across the human fleet, the ships began to shift positions, preparing for the final strike. The teleportation technology that had given them the upper hand would soon be put to its ultimate test. It was a gamble, a dangerous one, but there was no turning back now. As the last phase of the plan unfolded, the humans activated their teleportation drives in unison. The ships scattered, appearing and disappearing in rapid succession, creating confusion in the enemy ranks. But the Rotarians were adapting quickly, trying to regain control of the battlefield. "Admiral," Lieutenant Thompson's voice echoed through the comms. "They've started firing at the teleportation units. They're adapting to our tactics." Catherine's mind raced. The Rotarians were learning, but the humans were faster. This was the turning point. Humanity had no more time to waste. The final strike had to be decisive. "Target their flagship," she ordered. "Full power to the forward guns. We end this now." With a roar of power, the Vanguard and its allies pushed forward, teleporting in and out of range of the enemy. The Rotarians were unable to track the humans as they jumped from place to place, their weapons disorienting the enemy long enough to allow a concentrated attack on the largest and most vulnerable ship, the Rotarian flagship. The massive enemy ship quivered under the assault. Explosions rippled through its hull, and shockwaves rocked the battlefield. The human fleet kept up their relentless fire, bombarding the flagship from all sides, tearing through its defenses with brutal precision. But the battle was far from over. The Rotarians, now desperate, activated their last-ditch countermeasure, a weapon of unimaginable power. A wave of energy burst from the flagship, engulfing the battlefield in a blinding flash. For a moment, everything went dark. "Report." Catherine's voice was commanding, cutting through the panic. "We've taken heavy damage to the outer hull," a crew member shouted. "The flagship is still standing." Catherine's heart sank. They had almost won. Almost. But the Rotarians weren't done yet. Their flagship had survived, and their weapons were still operational. A bead of sweat ran down Catherine's forehead. She had prepared for many things, but this was a test of humanity's resolve. Then, just as the Rotarians began to rally, humanity's last ace in the hole arrived. Out of the darkness of space, a new fleet emerged, human reinforcements. Fresh ships, their technology fully upgraded with the latest advancements, had arrived just in time. They had been waiting, hiding in the deepest shadows, ready to strike when the humans needed them most. The new fleet emerged in a spectacular array of firepower, catching the Rotarians off guard. The reinforcements made their attack with devastating precision, bringing the full might of humanity's power to bear. The Rotarians could not escape this time. Their flagship, already battered from earlier blows, was overwhelmed by the new wave of attacks. The combined human forces pounded the flagship, tearing it apart piece by piece. The final blow came from the vanguard, its weapons charging one last time. With a deafening explosion, the Rotarian flagship exploded into a cloud of debris. The rest of the enemy fleet fell into disarray as the remaining ships attempted to flee, but it was too late. Humanity had won. Catherine stood still, watching as the remnants of the enemy fleet scattered into the void. The victory was theirs, but the cost had been high. She knew that this was just the beginning. There would be more battles ahead, more wars to fight. But for now, humanity had secured its place in the galaxy. With a quiet nod to her crew, she turned and made her way out of the command center. The battle was over, but the war, that was just beginning.